Hey, Rick, good morning.
Morning. Morning. Sorry about the confusion on the meeting invite. Not sure exactly what happened there, but I did hear from Jason. Maybe you have too, but he said he'd probably be on around 10:30.
Okay. Yeah, and Christie is signing in. I followed up. For some reason, he didn't get the second more recent invite either. I mean, clearly he's on the email list, so it's something else going on there.
Christy McEachran didn't get it, huh?
Christie,
I mean, Christy Kickham, sorry. So that's interesting because I was looking at the resent meeting invite and he was definitely on it, so I'm not sure.
yeah. So I don't know if there's some, I don't know, we'll have to figure it out. I think with the not meeting last week, kind of maybe that threw people too, but we'll square it away on our
Yeah.
next meeting announcement if we actually end up with a quorum. I mean, my only concern is we don't get this wrapped up for to pass on to the select board and the FinCom. That's really our only deadline at this point. Hey, Richard, good morning.
Good morning.
How goes it
It goes well.
now that it seems like winter's almost here?
And you?
Doing well, thanks. My standard reply is we're getting there. Because it gives people a moment to pause and think, where are we going? Amongst other things.
Yeah.
No, it's been good. Hey, Peter.
Hello, gentlemen. How are you?
Good morning.
Good morning.
We're waiting for Christy. Peter, Richard, did either of you not get, I'm just trying to narrow down perhaps what the issues are with meeting invites. Did either of you not get the initial meeting invite?
I didn't get the initial, no.
Okay.
I don't believe I did.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I did. I saw the follow-up one sent last night or this morning. I'm not sure about the original. If it came a while ago, it might be, slipping my mind, but.
Okay, yeah, I'm in the same boat as you on that one. And Christy, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you.
And you didn't get any of the, a copy of any of the invites through the email?
No, I didn't see anything.
Forwarded?
I looked, yeah, the last thing I got was the cancellation from last week's meeting.
Okay. All right, so Rick, just so you're aware, with respect to receiving emails, for some reason, Christy's the only one who didn't receive the most recent, but Richard, myself, and Peter did. We do have a quorum, so I guess what we'll do is we'll call the meeting to order and kind of discuss how we're going to proceed. So good morning. For the record, I'm Stephen Welch, Chair of the Capital Program Committee. I'd like to confirm member access. Richard Hussey.
Here.
Peter Kaiser.
Here.
Christy Kickham.
Here.
And staff, Rick Sears.
Here.
And Allie, is that you at Town Committee too?
Yes, it is.
And good morning, Allie.
Hi. Good morning.
Okay, great. There are no anticipated speakers and no members of the public. So I'll run through Charlie Baker's quick announcement here. This meeting is being held via Zoom video and audio broadcast on the town's YouTube channel, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12th. Materials provided to members for the meeting or provided during the meeting are, unless otherwise noted, available on our website with the town. I will forward a copy of the worksheet we're going to be reviewing today to Allie with a CC to Rick, just so you guys have it to post. Please remember to mute your Zoom audio until your name is called. Let's just have this direct discussion through the chair for minutes. And lastly, formal votes, if any, will be conducted by roll call. With that said, I'd like to call the meeting of the Capital Program Committee to order. It is Thursday, December 10th, shortly after 10 a.m. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
So move.
Richard, on your motion?
Aye.
Christy Kickham?
Aye.
Peter Kaiser?
Aye.
Thank you,
Sorry, I was
Peter.
on mute.
No worries. Okay, public comment, there is none. So this morning, we're gonna try and resolve out Rory's, the ranking of relative importance per request in order to forward a recommendation. I should say a preliminary recommendation, which will be based ultimately on funding sources. The final recommendation. So we'll get a preliminary together for the select board and the finance committee. Along those lines, I have put together Rick, thank you for forwarding that information on the breakdown. That's helpful. And let's see. Can you guys see that?
Mhm.
Okay, great. So where we are with these is I'm going to just run through a couple of quick data points. But before we do, thoughts on proceeding with voting on these without a full board?
Prefer to have a full board to do it. Obviously, if time's an issue, our hands could get tied, but
All right. Christie?
Well, I mean, there's a point to where you have to do your report. We got to do the report, you know, and well, the longer we wait, the more we're pushed up against the fence with that. So that should really dictate, you know, when we really should be voting on this. Obviously, a full board would be great, but if it's not available, then we gotta move.
Right. Okay. And then I'll comment on that in just a minute. Richard, did you want to comment or do you want me to respond just to give that a little bit of shape?
I think I prefer a full board.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I'm done.
Okay. I thought that was wasn't a dramatic pause, but it was a I'm done pause. So where we are is my only concern in not producing something is for the select board and the FinCom is there has been in the past, you know, for whatever reason, schedule is a concern for them to get some information mid-December. I understand they have information that they're trying to process and decisions they're trying to make. However, I don't think anything turns on, and I want to ask Rick on this in a moment. I don't think anything turns, any decisions they have to make turn on are providing them the final preliminary recommendation now this week, as opposed to doing it next week. I don't know that for certain, so I want to ask Rick. So that's one point. The other point is with respect to our final report, we're going to have some discussions on funding, and those need to be resolved out in early January. So whether we vote on this, discuss and vote on this today, or discuss and vote on this next week won't affect that. But I do appreciate, Christie, you keeping that in mind, because I do think it's an important aspect of it. Rick, with respect to the select board and the finance committee, obviously we'd like to finish this up, the preliminary, and get them to them tomorrow. But what are your thoughts on what meetings you may have scheduled with them for discussing capital project requests?
So just last night, I took the select board through the town manager's recommendation on capital. And I will tell you, I've kind of looked over the last couple of weeks at how she's prioritized them versus kind of where they are here. And I'd say there's not a lot of outtrades. I mean, it's reasonably consistent. Things like the trench and technical rescue equipment, you know, you've rated it low, it's out of her plan kind of thing. So, and I would say that the questions that the select board asked about specific projects, pretty much non-existent. Christy Ferrantella did ask about the debt exclusion projects last night, and was hoping to get an in-depth explanation about each one of them. We didn't have the DPW director on, so that didn't happen. But I don't get a sense that there's like an urgency for tomorrow, given the fact that they just heard from the town manager yesterday.
Okay, and then the only other comment I'll make, and then we can just make a determination, is I am a little concerned that we will be, depending on the length of our discussion next week, having discussion about funding sources will not, we won't have a bunch of time for discussion about funding sources if we put off this discussion and vote this week. So, and it may be that we don't need a lot of time for discussion on these requests to finalize them next week, because the overwhelming majority are requests that were brought forth last year but not funded due to the town meeting delay. But I just want to point that out too. Sorry not to be conclusive in my statement, but it's more a point of information than it is a recommendation. I'm sorry, Rick, and then
Oh.
Richard.
So since this is my first full cycle of Capcom, what, from a funding source perspective, can I just ask what process do you actually go through? What do? Do you say, you wait for Brian to tell you how much free cash there is, how much, what actually happens? Pardon me for.
Right, so no, that's fine. So what we'll do is we'll take the, Brian, typically Libby will show up in case there's questions, one way or the other. That's not as important. But we'll get the information on recommended funding sources. We'll discuss amongst ourselves whether these seem reasonable, whether we think that there should be changes, and both with respect to the overall dollar number and the individual requests. And then from there, we will, with the preliminary out of the way, this, whether we're going to recommend. So let me back up a second. This would be the first step, whether we recommend a project regardless of a specific funding source, the merit of the request relative to the need of the community. And that's one of the reasons why we actually segregate out in our process funding sources from the initial vote, is because I think it's important for us as a committee to establish the relevant need, and then we address the funding sources. Typically, as a calendar item, funding sources are not really firmed up in any event due to the free cash number, and then the recommendation coming, a final recommendation coming through the finance department. Once we get that final recommendation, or a high level, almost final recommendation, we review it, we comment upon it, we determine whether we're in sync with it. If we're not, we record our differences. And from there, I enter that information in for the report, and then we can also develop the tax rate impacts and so on and so forth for the report. And if there's a difference between our, obviously, one of the finer details of that is that there's a difference between what we recommend and what finance and the town recommends, then it's, there's a little bit more lifting involved in both the explanatory process to the select board and the finance committee and in our reports, because there's a difference. To date, we've been really close. It's basically come down to dollar numbers. And I think, for instance, I don't want to pick on DPW, but I think we did a level funding of $1 million for recurring general type expense requests. And initially, maybe I'm wrong and maybe I'm right, but let's use this as an example. Finance in the town said, well, we'd like to fund a little bit more, or we'd like to fund a little bit less. We reconciled, and then we went forward with one number, and then our numbers, which ultimately, get reported, and I presume people look at with respect to town meeting and whatnot, jived with what the town manager presented to the select board and to the finance committee. So that's it in a not totally succinct nutshell, but there's a lot going on there, and I was hoping to capture some of the different aspects of it.
So would it be helpful, Stephen, because the presentation that I gave to select board last night has the funding sources on it, and it has the totals and the whole 9 yards as per the town manager's prioritization. Would that be helpful for me to forward to you all, or do you prefer to do your own process? And then, it's public information. It's on the website.
No, it's fine. Actually, one of the items on our to-do list that I was going to bring up as a next step would be to ask you to forward the individual funding source recommendations, and then we can infill into the worksheet, and we would review it at the next meeting. That was considering contingent on doing the merit of the request today at this meeting. There's nothing that segregates them other than having enough time to do them in one meeting. So, I mean, I'm almost inclined that we vote on these and we can reconcile if there is a difference in our final report. Because we did broadcast that this would be a discussion to resolve the requests, whether we're going to recommend them or not. I think that, and I don't mind if you guys outvote me on this, it's fine. I'm just wanting you to understand where I'm coming from on it. The other, I think the major underlying aspect of my feeling comfortable with our proceeding with these is, again, that the bulk majority of these were requests brought forward from last year. Not just that they were not in a normal sequence where they're sequential years funding, but because they weren't actually put on the, they weren't voted at town meeting. It's not that they weren't approved, it's that they weren't actually advanced because of the limited town meeting agenda. So there you have it. Any other discussion before we take a vote? Richard, I'm sorry, you had.
Yes, in Rick's presentation last night, there were, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe there were 5 changes in dollar amounts recommended by Libby.
Probably thereabouts.
So would it be important to update this document with those dollar changes?
So I had asked, just this background, I don't know who you're asking the question to, but I had asked Brian whether or not I should notify you all of the town manager's changes, and his response was, well, given the fact that they're doing Rory's right now, which is supposed to be price tag indifferent, right? Because you don't actually rate the price. I don't think you do. The Rory framework isn't about how much does something cost. The Rory framework is about how does it impact resilience and safety and things like that. So, but Stephen, anyways, that's not.
I appreciate that, and it's good to have an understanding, insight into how Brian's looking at those differences too. I don't disagree with the comment, except for the fact that I think if there's an order of magnitude difference between, not necessarily 10 times the amount, but if there's a large discrepancy in the value of a request, the dollar amount of a request, for instance, cobblestone improvements went up to $1.5 million versus 500,000. That would be something I think we'd want to have broadcast to us, because although it doesn't affect the merits, it will affect the discussion we have about the comments we'll include in our recommendation to advance it. So for instance, we may decide in that instance, a particular project went from the request went from $500,000 to $1.5 million. In our discussion and our comments, we include that we're fine with the merits of the request. We recommend funding, but we recommend the original amount.
Yeah.
We will be, the other way to address this is that we are actually looking at the requests as they were submitted with respect to dollar amounts. So our comments and our recommendation will be based on those. So it's implicit that, and then the only other thing I would ask is, was there a wide discrepancy in any particular request, or are we talking about, $50,000, $100,000? Yeah. Not that those numbers are insignificant, but.
There's 3 or 4, and I can go through them pretty quickly if you'd like me to.
Yeah, please. And then I think, well, let me ask this before we go that route, because if we're not going to be moving on this morning, which I think I prefer, then we can hold that discussion to the next meeting. So Richard, any other comments on that? Does that answer the question?
Yeah, it does. If things are price neutral, I guess we shouldn't, for example, with the Wait Drive proposal of 3 million plus, the town just got a grant for, I believe, 1.5 million, 1.6 million. So that number will obviously change. But if these things aren't price tag driven, so be it.
Well, I think they are to some extent, but we don't lose our chance to have further input on the recommendation aspect. So if a dollar number changed, I thought that we anticipated, maybe I misunderstood, and I picked this up at planning, that there would be funding from the state on Wait Drive, and we were just anticipating. Did I misunderstand that, Rick?
No, there is $1.5 million of a grant available, or that will be applicable. So I talked to Brian about this after the select board last night, and I was just reviewing the text because Brian and I had discussed whether we leave that in for the select board or take it out, and the decision was to leave it in for the select board at the $3 million number. There is a state grant in the amount of $1.5 million. And Brian is saying that we already have 2 million appropriated. I can't confirm that right this second, and I haven't had a chance since he mentioned it last night. So I think we're going to need to, I'll have to circle back to you on that one. But in any event, it's $1.5 million, not 3 million. Because
right. And just so you're aware, thank you, Rick. And just so you're aware, how we typically will track that for our purposes is we track the full dollar amount, and then in comments or footnotes, we indicate state or federal grants or whatever the offset would be, private donations, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're back. We're kind of circling back. Are we? What are our thoughts on moving forward and trying to wrap this up with respect to a preliminary recommendation today? Christie, Kickham?
Sounds like, if we're not up against the wall, that maybe we just wait. But I would also say, we find out who can make the meeting next week. And if we still have some members missing, that we try to find another time when we can all meet.
Okay. Peter Kaiser, did you?
Yeah, that had just crossed my mind too. If we can reach out with kind of a agenda, or not an agenda, but a scheduling kind of request, and just see maybe a separate time from our typical Thursday meeting when we might be able to, obviously we have to post it and everything. So I guess that does create difficulties, but do we have any idea if next week we're going to have a better turnout than this week? We probably don't even know at this point, do we?
No, and that's my concern, is we're drawing closer to the holiday. So
Yeah. If there's any meeting that requires, full attendance, it would probably be this one. Not to say that, it's a necessity, but
right.
In a perfect world, this one probably, it'd be good to have everybody's input, since everybody spent so much time vetting and ranking and everything else. But with that being said, the other part of me would defer to, the chair, because I think you have a better handle on timing and following timeline than the rest of us.
Yeah, look, thank you, Peter. I think it's fair to say that I would prefer that everyone had been here, and I understand that there are scheduling conflicts and whatnot. I do want to be clear, this is not a surprise task. This is what our work has been building up to, and traditionally this is when we do it, and it was discussed at the last meeting. I think it was discussed at the last meeting. Well, I know we've discussed that it would be our mid-December meeting that we do this. So I'm fine if we hold off. My gut's telling me it's probably going to kick up some dust amongst discussion outside of our own committee. But if you guys want to have the full group here, I have no concern about it. I am a little concerned that we wait and people aren't available next week, and then it was for naught, and the dust is still kicked up, and we haven't really, accomplished anything. I'm sorry, did I see a hand go up? Christie, was that you? No. Well, I'd entertain, I think that this is something, I don't know that we actually need a full motion, but I do need to, I don't think it should be a dictatorial type of okay, we're gonna move forward thing. I need to have a consensus one way or the other. So I'm gonna look to you guys for some assistance with that. Christy? And then Peter?
I was just gonna see if Rick could send me this document. I don't think I have it.
So Stephen this is actually Stephen's document. I sent the data
Okay.
and then
Got it.
Stephen made it really much prettier than I did. You're
Okay.
showing me up, Stephen.
Nope, no problem. No
Well,
problem.
so Christy, I will forward this to Rick and Ally, and then Ally will distribute it, I think.
Also-
I'm Ally, just so it doesn't an open meeting thing, because we've already discussed it. I don't want to have it be misperceived. And go ahead again, Christy.
And then just a quick comment. I do look at the, obviously I look at the cost of each request. I mean, that does definitely weigh into how I'm rating my Rory's.
Yeah, sure. I get that. I just meant with respect to this, I'm not defending it, but I think to be clear, I meant with respect to this discussion, if it was, a $60,000 difference on a $3 million project, that would be one thing. If it's, $1 million difference on a $1 million project, that's another. Peter Kaiser?
We're just going to say, just based on the four of us that are here today, do any of you see conflicts being able to attend next Thursday? I mean, I'm guessing Stephen, you don't. Stephen Welch, I do not. I don't know about
I do not.
Christie and.
I'm in.
All right.
Okay, so we at least know the four of us will be here. So I guess, cost benefit, buy us a week. I guess that's part of the cost, but hopefully benefit of having, one, two, or all three of the other members available.
Right. Let me ask Rick. Rick, do you see any on the finance? I'm not filibustering. On the finance side of this equation, if we give you our recommendation, are you guys going to be working on helping us to finalize funding sources, or this week before 2 weeks before Christmas holiday really isn't going to make much of a difference one way or the other?
So I guess the funding sources from the perspective of the town manager's prioritization, and let me just say that relative to this list that you have, the trench and technical rescue equipment is not part of the recommendation, the town manager's recommendation. And can you just go to the next page?
Yeah,
Stephen?
sure.
The island-wide wiring feasibility study is not part of the town manager's recommendation. So admin 21002. I'll send these to you, Stephen.
Thank you.
So my only point on flagging those is that they won't have a funding source. Otherwise, all of the projects on here have a funding source as determined by the town manager and Brian at this point in time. So is the question, can we provide them for you? We have them.
Okay, and that's helpful. And then I mean, I understood that before, but it took me a moment to kind of get some clarity with our own process and the timeline. So with respect to tax rates and whatnot, those are types of things we won't do to the first week of January. So holding off a week is not the end all of things. I would ask that perhaps when it is communicated to, well, we'll deal with the dust separately. On the matter of, I think what I would suggest then is one, Richard, I'll take you in 1 second. What I'll suggest is that we will hold the discussion of the actual requests. Clearly the consensus is to do that. I'm fine with that. What I'd like to do before we wrap up this morning is take advantage of the fact that we are a quorum, and we will certainly be at least the members attending next week's meeting. So if Rick could, after I take Richard's question, if Rick could fill us in a little bit more on the three that have a dollar number difference, and we'll get that out of the way. And at the very least, we'll be familiar with them next week. And if other members come in, maybe what you could, Rick, what you could plan on doing is just distributing an email to the membership that indicates the request, the dollar amount difference, and if an explanation seems necessary, what, a brief sentence or two. But we would like to maybe get those 3 or 4 requests highlighted now with a brief sentence or two. After I take Richard's question, I'm sorry, Rick.
Okay, it's just an observation. I think the presentation that Rick made last night, that deck, if you send that deck to the committee members, along with these 2 items that Stevens put together, I think they're perfect documents to work from.
So with respect to funding sources, I'm going to put that into what we have because we're going to try and do 2 tasks at once next meeting, which will be discussing funding sources. And for me, in terms of facilitating the meeting, I know this is silly, but on Zoom, on this particular computer, I don't have my 3 monitors. I have 1 monitor and it's, nice size, but I can't have all the documents up. So if we'll get you, Rick can send that information, that would be wonderful. And then I'll incorporate the funding sources into into a PDF so we can be looking at it for the vote on the individual requests. This, for instance, if you look at the numbers, it shows any that fall below the mean and in red. And then I will have a spreadsheet up that is the spreadsheet version of this with additional information to add comments into. Rick, please, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so first of all, Stephen, if you like, you can send me the data and I'm happy to put the funding sources in and send it back to you. It's up to you, but either way. So I think the big ones are, so on facilities, that list of 8 projects is unchanged. However, this funding source, this facilities funding proposal that Brian brought up at the last meeting we presented to the select board last night, with I guess I would say mixed review. I know Jason was quite supportive. I think Matt misunderstood it, but because the ask in the town manager's recommendation, that total there for those 8 projects right at the top of the page is $4.35 million. The request is going to be for $6.5 million. There's going to, and that the delta, the difference there is a plug number of whatever the difference is there, $2,149,000, and that is going to be proposed as a facilities borrowing mechanism. So the difficulty with the facilities project seems to be that we make a request, and when it comes time to do the work, we don't seem to have sufficient funding. That could be due to the passage of time. That could be due to unpredictable input costs. It could be due to poor scope clarity at the beginning, quite frankly. So that's going in at $6.5 million as a borrowing. So what we're going to do is we're going to borrow an amount of money, which is somewhere between $6.5 and $6.9 million. That is where the debt service, principal and interest, is $750,000 a year. Then the town sets aside that same $750,000 of free cash each year to fund that borrowing facility. So the goal there, or the outcome there, is hopefully that we get the project identification and the funding and the cost estimates in a tighter time window, so that it actually gets, the projects can be completed because we have sufficient funding. So there's a big delta right there. That's in the presentation, which I'll send around afterwards. But so all those projects that are there, I think you can go ahead and just rory them the way you would choose to do. But there is this side proposal for a funding mechanism for these projects. Does that make sense, Stephen? I know you're kind of aware of this already. I don't know how. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. It does. I mean, basically, I think to me, what you've done is you've given it a number to the concept that we previously discussed. And I think that that's very helpful. And then if you would, I think for our tracking is now that it seems more formalized, include it with a, the alphanumeric code and what the title will be. And, you know, I've got the FBM for the facilities borrowing mechanism, but whatever you all decide to call it. So we're using the same vocabulary words
Okay,
going
Gotcha.
forward.
yeah, makes sense.
Is there any questions for Rick on that particular item? Jason?
A question for, I guess, Rick and you, Stephen. I think the select board just needs a little more time understanding it because it's new, and probably finance committee as well. I'm supportive. I agree, Rick, that if you had a time to have a conversation, or Brian, with Matt, he'd better understand it, and the rest of the board members. I tried to say because I've had some background. I get it. It's creative and it's new. So if there's any way that I can help explain this, not sell it, but explain how we got here to other board members or FinCom, I'd be happy to. So I think it's a great idea.
Okay. Yeah, I think it just, where we swung and missed last night was, the point here really is to tighten up the window of time from project selection, cost estimates, and funding, so that this stuff all gets done. It's not about doing a borrowing instead of funding these things from free cash. It's about marrying up those three activities so that we don't approve something here in December. We finally get around to it a year from now, and labor's changed in an unpredictable way, or materials costs have changed in an unpredictable way. I think that the things that you're doing as a committee around holding the feet of the department heads to the fire in terms of documentation and clarity about the project is also, it will help as well. But this is really about just getting a tighter time frame around the whole thing. So, I can send you. Stephen, if you send me this, I can probably update this with in the familiar fashion to similar fashion to what was presented last night. So if we draw a line under that, the next big one is, so cobblestones was reduced by the town manager from 500,000 to 250,000. And I'm,
Yeah, 250?
yeah, a decrease of 250 to 250. There you go. And then the road improvements, line 24, Stephen.
Mhm.
That's a 1.25 million. So that's a large change.
Okay.
Reduced to 1.25 million. The trench, line 36 was not part of the town manager's recommendation. On line 74, there was previously the turf, nobody artificial turf improvements. That was removed by at the direction of the DPW. I had already taken it out of the information that I had sent you, but it would have been in previous iterations of this, Stephen. So, so it's not really a line 74 item, but I'm just saying the turf fields, which you'll still see in Plum, I think. It's been moved out to 24. If you search on 22, it won't show up anymore. But Stephen, it's not it's just to be clear, it's not for the field house, it's for the artificial turf. I'm just putting it back where roughly it was. Do you follow what I'm saying?
Hold
Okay,
on one
so-
second. Yeah, what am I?
Okay, sorry. I'm confusing you, and it's sorry, I apologize. So when under Public Works, all those projects at those amounts stand per the town manager. I'm telling you that there was another project. I didn't include it in the data that I sent to you because I knew it was being pulled by the town manager, and that's probably my oversight, which was no Badir artificial turf improvements.
Gotcha.
It was $250,000. In talking to Rob, he decided that we could wait till 24 for that. So it's not in your data here anymore, but it was. That's why I'm flagging it to you, okay?
Well, yeah, it's not line 74.
Yeah,
It's not line
line-
74.
Right.
I'm sorry. It's not line 74. I just related it to line 74 because that's where it used to be.
So the field improvements are not, literally, the nobody or field improvements are not a request that we reviewed and commented on. And they're going from, they weren't, it was not advanced to us. In any event, it's going to FY '24.
No, I think it was advanced to you originally. That's what I'm saying. So let me just, I'm going to have to check
Don't-
that.
Yeah,
No,
I don't think
you don't
we,
recall it?
no.
Okay.
54 was all of our requests.
Okay.
I hate to,
Next.
Ally, we're getting a little feedback from your phone line. I'm sorry, I sent you a quick text private, but if you could mute, that would be a big help.
Okay, well, in that case, I just confused the whole discussion for nothing. I apologize.
No, no worries. I do that all the
Okay.
time.
And then campus-wide improvements, line 81.
Yep.
That was reduced to $1 million from $1,276,063.
I'm sorry, to 1 million?
To $1 million, yes. Line 92 was reduced to $100,000. And
I'm on a flat keyboard. It's totally not what I'm used to.
um,
Okay, go ahead. I'm
and
sorry.
line 93 was removed from the town manager's recommendation, so it no longer exists.
Removed as in,
Yeah.
as in terms of it's no longer a request or
Cor-
it's being moved to an out year?
No, it's no longer a request. But we didn't move it to an out year. She just decayed it.
Okay,
She just said no to it. So I have every expectation that'll come up again next year. It seems like it's been coming up for a while, every
so
year
it's
for a while.
it's
So
not recommended.
it's the same as the trench stuff.
Okay,
And then no change to airport, no change to sewer, no change to any of the enterprise funds or Wanacom. So those are the changes.
okay. And I guess the other thing I would just ask is we have had in the capital, the 5 million for Island Home Design and Construction. Was that put forth? Is that not being put forth as an FY '22 request? Is it something you prefer that we discuss at the next meeting?
It's not being put forth as a 22 request. That was for the design, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, no. Where do you have that? Do you see that here somewhere?
yeah, it's right here in this little note that I have down here.
Oh, okay.
It's no longer
Um,
there.
No, it was not put forward as a request. You know, the discussion on, Jason, you were there, but the discussion on our Island Home last night was simply about from an operating perspective and the $3.5 million of free cash we probably need to set aside in order to ensure its operations next year.
Okay, so that's helpful. I think it will speed along our discussion next week. Obviously, we'll update the information subject to everyone being over with that. We'll have a very brief discussion about that in a second. And any comments or questions to Rick on any of those, I'll put them up. Again, we've got the facilities borrowing mechanism, the FBM, which increases the DPW facilities by about 2.1 to 6.5 million. Cobblestone improvements reduction, the road improvements reduction, the weight drive state grant offset, which we previously discussed but didn't have a firm number on, or a firm determination, I should say, from the state. And I'm repeating these, Rick, in case I got something wrong.
I'm looking.
Trench and technical, is that large enough? Can you guys actually see it?
Yeah.
The trench and technical rescue equipment was not recommended by town admin for FY '22. Field improvements, synthetic fields is a notation for another day. The campus-wide improvement has been reduced to 1 million, so about 2.76 there. The harbor plans implementation has been reduced to 100,000, so $50,000 delta. And the island-wide underground wiring feasibility study is not recommended for FY22. Okay.
That's
Any
it.
questions or comments for Rick on those? Okay, so what I suggest we do, guys, is we would, for next week, we'll leave our numbers as they are. And we would vote, because it's consistent with the requests that we received and that were in our Rory's and our software. And we will include in our comments the changes made by town admin in her recommendations, and also how we come out on that. So for instance, I'll give you an example. Road improvements. We agree that it should be recommended for FY22, subject to the reduction of 1.25 million. And that the reduction of 1.25 million would stay in the comments section. And that'll keep our paperwork clean. And then it will allow Rick on the software and the tracking side to have that kind of seamless. Is that good with you guys? Okay. Jason, just to give you a quick update where we are, and then Christy, basically we've decided that we're short a couple of members. It was a few, and that we would be holding off on a vote of the preliminary recommendations till next week's meeting. I had some concerns about that, but I agree that with the consensus view that we should wait until we have a full board, or if we don't have a full committee next week, that we just move ahead due to time constraints. Any thoughts on that, or you're good with it? Good. Christy, did you have something? And then Peter?
I just had a comment, that trench and technical rescue, and maybe I should mention this next week, but it's the chief is, I think he's doing his part by bringing this forward, feels like he might need it. And, I can see this being one of those items that we get every year, and we just, because we've seen this for, I think, 2 or 3 years now. And I think we get it every year, and we just, we knock it down, hopefully we never have to use it, but it's just, we either he stops bringing it forward or we approve it. But for him to keep approving it and us to keep not approving it, I think is a little, it's a little gray area. And if we ever come into the situation where the town was liable in a situation and we never approved it, but the chief always brought it forward, I think the $220,000 is a pretty good investment. Just a comment.
Okay. So we can think on that. I appreciate that. Those are good points. And we'll take that up. You may be repeating it at our next meeting for the rest of the group. Along the lines of that, Jason, are you we've confirmed our availability for next Thursday. The idea being, obviously, if we're going to put it off, we want to make sure we know who's going to be able to attend. Will you be available next Thursday? Do you?
Yes.
Okay. So we'll at least have we 5 and hopefully 2 more. Okay. Thoughts, anything else on this? Okay. So we're going to jump over to green sheets, committee reports. Anything going on the select board we want to know about, Jason?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Not that we already discussed here today.
Thank you. Good of the order. Yep, I think we're doing good. Anyone else? Date of next meeting is Thursday, December 17th. So next Thursday at 10 a.m. We will, I've got a couple of quick questions for Rick on that and some comments. So obviously next week, we're going to do the Rory's completion, preliminary up, down. I'd like to find out, let's see, Rick, are you aware of any citizen requests or any select board requests with a capital component?
Citizen, no, and I've confirmed that with Brian. Select board, none have been raised in any of the updates that I've been given. And I
Okay.
have not seen anything else.
Okay, so I just wanted to check and see if there's anything on our horizon that might affect our final. And then next week, we will, depending on how far we get through, we need to get through the Rories. If we complete that task, we will get into some discussion on the funding sources. So I'll coordinate with Rick and we'll get that information into the document, and then we can send it out so you guys can have a little bit of time to think about it. And also, if you would please consider thoughts on items or elements to include in our report. You all probably have a copy of that last year's report. I know you sleep with it under your pillow. And we'll just see if there's anything you think you might want to add or change. And I'll take that under advisement so that we can, I'll have some time to process it before I actually start getting into the meat of drafting the report. And Rick, just so you know, on our horizon schedule wise, one of the things we'll be looking at is a capital project status report. So traditionally we'd be looking at any open requests and recently completed requests, projects, and just to get an idea of what's been going on, how they were resolved, if there were any kind of exceptions, and better information that helps us to better understand how you all are doing with respect to department heads in completing the projects and how we are reviewing them and forecasting. And that's not for next week. I just want to give you a heads up that that's something we typically do in sometime in January.
So just to be, so I can ask a question?
Please.
Just on it. So open projects.
Yep.
Is that what you said? You would like to know what projects are ongoing, because that's a list of 300 projects, right? That are.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things. I think it would behoove us to know that number, but what I'd suggest is maybe you and I will work offline to kind of categorize those that are under $50,000 or $100,000 and segregate those out, and perhaps some other ones that are just more ministerial type tasks to complete. Works for you?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, good. All right, I got nothing else, you guys. If any no other comments, I entertain a motion to adjourn. Oh, Christy, kick him.
Just, Stephen, you can forward this updated version.
Yeah, I'll send this to, I guess what I'd ask is, so we're not to confuse documents. Rick, I can send this to you. If you could infill the funding sources, I'd appreciate it. And then if you want to send it to the group, do you guys want it in a PDF or a spreadsheet?
Probably PDF.
All right, Rick,
If it's,
PDF.
if
How
it's
about both,
cleaner.
guys?
Yeah.
right.
Or
Rick,
both.
if you, I'll send it to you. You infill it. I'll send a PDF back for distribution to the group. And then Chrissy, it will include not only updates, but the recommended funding sources.
Could you, yeah, you could send it to me in floppy drive.
Floppy.
We'll fax it to you.
All right, motion to adjourn, please.
So moved.
Thank you, Peter. On your motion?
Aye.
Richard,
Aye.
Christy Kickham,
Aye.
and Jason Bridges,
Aye.
and myself and I. Thanks, everybody. I appreciate it, and
David.
we'll see you next week.
Thanks,
Sounds
Rick.
See you next week.
Bye.
Take care.